we'll start off with. We'll have regular breaks as we did on Friday. The aim today is that once Mr. Littlewood's evidence is completed, we'll resume at 2 o'clock. The reason for that is Mrs. Vincent wanted to give certainty to the interested parties who are appearing today, so make sure that they had a particular time to turn up. So there might be a slightly longer lunch break. We will retain a 9:30 commencement tomorrow morning, as again, similar to last Friday, we need to complete matters by quarter to 4. Last week there was various discussions around altering the timetable so that we could hear the joint counsel's witness, Mr. Kelly, and at the time I think we were looking at the 4th of November. We've asked to see if that can change to the 5th of November. My understanding is that Mrs. Vincent's already been in touch with the council. Can I just confirm that that's acceptable, Ms. Dravkin-Reiter?
Yes, I think we've confirmed now to Mrs. Vincent that the 5th of November does work.
Thank you very much. And can I just check to see that that's convenient with other parties?
Fine for us, sir.
Thank you. So in that case, the aim will be to resume at 10 o'clock on the 5th of November.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just one other thing on the programme. Whilst I might sort of anticipate your answer, Mr. Cameron, I'm just going to ask you whether you've heard anything about Clare Hall and sealing documents or anything.
Drafts of the agreements are passing between the respective solicitors, so work is underway, but nothing's been signed or sealed as yet.
Anything firmer about a target date other than the one they've already given us?
Short answer is no update on the date, but certainly been stressed from this end that we are keen to reach agreement as soon as we can.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, as soon as we've got some certainty, it'd be helpful for everyone to know in terms of the
Of course, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron. Just moving on to other matters, we received a letter from Highways England, which was a short letter confirming that the M11 overbridge agreement was completed and sealed. I can't recall whether we were expecting that, and I don't know whether other parties have seen that yet. Obviously, we'll make it available. Mr. Cameron, is that presumably that's something to do with your client's approach to permissions they need?
It is. It's the agreement to place a bridge across the M11, and agreement has been reached with Highways England on that issue. I think before Highways England said it was, I can't remember what they said, but it would have been something along the lines of underway, and this confirms that agreement has been reached.
Okay, thank you.
But I hope that doesn't come as a surprise to anybody, because it was under negotiation, and you could see that from Highways England's initial response, and it's an essential part of the scheme to get agreement with Highways England.
I can't recall, but we've already been sitting for quite a while. That was mentioned. Richard, anything you want to?
Just include it as an inquiry.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, we'll include that as an inquiry document. So I'll ask Mrs. Vincent if she can add that to the the letters. It's a very short letter. Didn't say much more than I've just said there. Last week we also talked about site visits. Mrs. Vincent's put up our sort of initial suggestions that we talked, and we've already received, or rather I think Mrs. Vincent's already received some suggestions. Now that that's up on the website, if anybody's got any comments or views on it, it'd be helpful to hear those by the end of the week, to see whether if there's anywhere in particular somebody wants to go that thinks we're missing. So I think it'd be helpful if we had any comments from anyone by, let's say, sort of 5 o'clock on Friday as a target time. Although it will remain a sort of an emerging programme as and when different venues and different locations are agreed. In terms of documents we've requested, there was one where Coton Orchard sent in a draft or a proposal for the Coton Orchard County Wildlife Site, but what we wanted was the actual official designation of the County Wildlife Site. I don't think we've received that yet. We did ask, I think, the applicants in the first instance to provide that. So we have a plan showing the boundary, but unless it's tucked away in an appendix somewhere that I've not been able to find, it'd be helpful to have the sort of the official designation, the words that go with the plan.
And just on that, bearing in mind that Ms Gaisley is due to give evidence tomorrow, it would be useful to have it before then.
Noted, sir, and I hope that those who are listening will get onto that.
There was also something which we thought was a simple ask but turned into quite a long exchange, was what we described as a simple highways drawing showing the two parties' positions about, I'll choose my words carefully so I don't want to set off another another wild goose chase, the areas within which they felt they were designing the alternative scheme or commenting on the alternative scheme. Have we got anywhere with that?
Well, I haven't seen anything from the applicant. I think, as I said, I think during some of the evidence, I had initially indicated to you that we had drawn up a plan. I think we've inherited the plan, but both the initial plan that we based our designs on and the later plan produced by the applicant from the applicant. So I think we've been working to the applicant's plan. So I think I don't know whether the applicant's been able to produce a plan or explain the differences between them, but I think that's where we are on that. I don't think we're... Yeah, so we haven't seen anything further from the applicant, in short.
Okay. Mr Cameron.
Well, the position is, as I set out, and then Mr Parker said that I'd got it right before, which was that the CPPF downloaded a plan from the county website which shows highway boundaries, or GCP website, and that is the plan that they based their work on. The applicant was asked for and provided a topographical survey of the highway, but that does not show those boundaries on it. And that's as far as we've got, but we're not quite sure what else it is that we're being asked for, because the difficulty that we have is, are we being asked to have a drawing which shows the extent of the area between boundary features? That will be one thing. If we're being asked to show what's shown in the county records as the highway, those are the green drawings that we've already got. So we're not quite sure what else it is that we're being expected or being asked to do. We're happy to try and help as much as we can.
Well, I think what we wanted was, if I can refer to the purple line, which I think was the colour that was used on the sections to show the applicant's interpretation of where the CPPF had had designed it, and because you'd provided red lines, I think, if I've got if I can recall the colours correctly, which are in a different location from your search of the land registry. I think what we wanted was rather than just that on a section, just those 2 lines on a plan. In terms of the interpretation and commentary, I think we've noted the positions and how the parties have got to those. But it was just really a plan showing those two lines, just so we can see, because obviously we can see in a section, but there's only a few slices we can see where there's a difference. It was just to see in plan form where the difference was and how far that difference extended. So I don't know if what I'm perceiving to be a very simple plan is going to be more complicated than it sounds. But,
it is going to be complicated because those red vertical lines are based on the land registry title documents, and where that is coincident with the highway boundary, that is indicated. Mm-hmm. But I'm not sure we can draw a coincident line, because it may be that in places the highway boundary is not the same as that shown on the land registry plans, so we might have 2 lines, and then we get that doesn't help, and we can show it on we've got the land registry plans, and we've got the green highway boundary drawing, and we've got the purple lines which were downloaded from the GCP website. But what I'm reluctant to do is for the County Council as applicant to put in a document which says definitively this is the highway boundary, in places where they're not sure where the highway boundary is, because what they have is those green plans. That's what shows. And so we're happy to do whatever we're asked, but certainly from our point of view, the dispute isn't can you get it within, is partly whether you can get it within the existing highway boundary and whether you would need compulsory purchase, but more importantly, what's the effect on heritage and ecological assets, which doesn't turn on these points.
Yeah, I understand that. I mean, yeah, it sounds like it's already getting more complex, because I think what you're suggesting is a plan with 3 different lines on might be the result. Also, I don't think we're asking for any annotation to say definitively this is the highway boundary. I think it's just saying this is the boundary that has been used on these drawings. This is the boundary that's come off the, should we call it the green plan, which is the council's highway boundary. This is the line that the applicant has drawn from the land searches. And just to, as I say, just to understand in plan form where those differences are.
Mr. Cambourne, you've drawn attention to the importance of topographical features on either side of the A road. Now, would it not be possible to put those in plan form for us so that we can see exactly what it is that you're referring to when you mention those?
Yes, we can do that, because we have a topographical survey which was given to CPPF, so we can put that in.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, yeah, I think we'll leave it there, and hopefully we'll get something just to clarify those points.
Yeah,
Mr. Parker.
It was just to say, from the discussions that I had with Mr. Newman, I've only had one discussion with him. I understand that it should be relatively straightforward to produce a plan which has the 2 lines on it. One which shows the line which underlies the assumptions which were used in the plans that the applicant provided and we downloaded from the website, because I understand Mr. Newman has those plans and can draw a line on them, and one to reflect the position according to the county highways maps. So I understand, unless Mr. Newman says otherwise, that just a plan with those 2 lines on it should be relatively straightforward to produce, but I don't think we have the capability to do that, because we've inherited these plans from the applicant. But that was my understanding from what Mr. Newman said to me.
So I'm going to ask for a plan to be drawn up, but before it goes in, I'm going to try and agree it with Mr. Parker, so we don't have another long discussion at that stage.
Yes. Thank you. Also, in terms of things we're still looking for, is when Mr. Lee gave evidence, it turned out there was some figures in the table which were incorrect, and there was also a figure, I think it's figure 9, where the annotation had gone all funny in the proof. So we were still after those.
Yes, Mr. Lee has produced some work on that over the weekend. We thought it sensible to circulate to the applicant first to make sure they're happy for that to go in, because there's another document which Mr. Whitehouse has produced about house price increases that Mr. Cambourne indicated wanted to go, and Mr. Lee's produced some work in response to that. So yes, that's it's in hand. But we've circulated it. I don't know whether, I think the email has just gone through to the applicant, so hopefully we can agree that, and then that can go in front of you as soon as possible.
I mean, obviously, I was just expecting the figures in the tables and the annotation on the figure, but it sounds like you're wanting to submit something additional.
Well, that's one piece of work, which is just to respond to those corrections. Okay. I don't know if you'll recall, there was a query about how house price increase at 2.2% had been calculated, and Mr. Whitehouse has circulated some information to explain how that figure was calculated, which I think itself is new evidence, which we're happy for the applicant to put in, but Mr. Lee has just commented briefly on that. As I say, he circulated that to the applicant, and hopefully that can come before you as an agreed note. It's very short. But that's how that issue has arisen. It's separate to the corrections to Mr. Lee's proof.
Right, understood. It's helpful that before you've sent anything to us, you've asked the applicant for their view. So
it's literally only just gone, so I don't expect the applicant to have had the opportunity to review it.
Okay. Well,
we can do things quite quickly, but not that quickly.
Yeah, okay.
So separate the 2 points. The correction to the figures in Mr. Lee's drawing, where it came out in incomprehensible symbols, that seems to me that just goes in with the correct symbols. That doesn't. The house price growth, you'll remember that I said we would produce something and send it to CPPF before putting it before the inquiry in the hope that it could be agreed. It was a one-page document, and we'll consider whatever Mr. Lee's sent back when we've had a chance to do that, and the sooner we get on with the evidence, sooner we'll get to that.
Well, thank you to both parties. And yes, whilst I was going to say something about a reminder about documents in a second, but if there are things that are essential to come in, it is very helpful, yes, if you could discuss them beforehand so we can understand whether they're agreed or if there's any dispute on them. Thank you. The other thing I wanted to mention in terms of documents is that obviously the reason why we've asked Mr. Kelly on behalf of the councils to give evidence a bit later was because of the emerging local plan. What obviously would be helpful is when things are available is to get a copy of the document. Obviously once its status is set, which I think is at the 27th of October, Mr. Abkin-Rater.
Yes, I'm sorry, I misled you previously by saying it was this Friday, but it's going to be next Monday, so the 27th of October. I obviously haven't seen that document, so I don't know what form it's going to be in. You'll recall, in terms of the previous version, there is an overarching document which is in the core documents, but also lots of supporting papers. So what I think the councils would propose is to send any kind of main document and a link to the plan documents generally.
Well, what I was going to say, I think what would be helpful, and again, I know I've just been saying we don't want any new evidence, but I think what would be helpful is if Mr. Kelly could provide a brief overview so that we can understand what it is, whether actually at the point of when it was when it goes through council, there's been any changes to it or anything like that. So just a brief factual sort of setting out what the differences are, if there are any, in terms of what's already before us and what the councils have issued, and then are there any differences there? And then that will mean that all parties can have an opportunity to look at that, hopefully. It may well be that obviously some of that can't be done until after the 27th, because if the two councils are going to consider it and approve it for the next stage, there could be changes, I suppose.
So I don't think Mr. Kelly is going to see the document until the 27th either. So he won't be able to provide a note on that until after the 27th. And obviously it covers a huge amount of different matters, and we will only be concerned with a few aspects of the plan, yes. As I think we've already gone through to some extent in relation to the emerging policy that already exists. So I can ask Mr. Kelly to essentially update those sections of his proof of evidence, if that would be helpful in relation
as
to
a supplement, I think that'd be really helpful.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair. Also, in terms of the plan, obviously, I don't think, unless it's something that's pertinent to evidence, we need all the supporting things at this stage. I think what would be helpful is a copy of the actual plan. What would also be helpful is just relevant extracts for those which are pertinent to issues in the inquiry, which may be relatively limited, just to make it easier for all parties, including myself and Mr. Clegg, just to focus on those particular things. And my understanding is that there isn't necessarily any dispute, I don't think, and I'm not just looking at CPPF, but with other parties in terms of which policies are relevant. There might be a difference in terms of interpretation and whether either alternatives or the applicant scheme comply with those policies or not. So again, it'd just be helpful to understand, because I've got no idea what's going to change, if there are any differences, so that we can then understand whether there's any, if there is still a broad agreement in terms of the relevant policies, as opposed to the interpretation of those. So just to sort of underline that, so I think there's three things we're after. We're asking Mr. Kelly, when he's in a position to do so, to provide a brief supplement to his proof, just to sort of update us. A copy of the latest version of the emerging plan as it's approved or agreed, and probably most helpful, a series of extracts, so it's easy to find particular draft policies or particular draft allocations that are relevant. Thank you.
Thanks, that's all noted. I certainly think we can make arrangements in terms of the emerging plan and extracts on the 27th or shortly after, but it may be that the supplementary proof from Mr. Kelly takes a few days.
Well, as soon as it's available, it'd be very helpful, because obviously, again, parties want the opportunity to have a look at that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And I was just going to do a general reminder. I mean, there are instances such as the emerging local plan, where obviously it's impossible for us to have had a copy before it's actually been through the councils. But just a general reminder that even though when people are coming to give evidence, it's not really an opportunity for people to provide additional documents to add to their case. We are really only after documents if they're essential and weren't available earlier. So the local plan's a good example of that. Just before I hand over to Mr. Cambourne, are there any other procedural matters that anybody wants to raise?
No, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Cambourne, just before I ask you to continue with Mr. Littlewood's cross-examination, can I just draw one thing, just a point of clarification? In your cross-examination, you took Mr. Littlewood to the yellow, pink, and blue drawing, let's call it, which was the one that was attached to the Anthony Eden letter. And I don't think this actually affects the point nor Mr. Littlewood's responses, but I just wanted to clarify. You drew attention to the sort of the crescent-shaped driveway. Now, on that drawing, which is it's CD1 06 16 and it's page 11, there certainly appears to be a little crescent driveway on the north side of the road, opposite the blue area. But I'm just wanting to double check whether that is actually the location of the current entrance. I'm looking particularly at the buildings on the other side of the road, where on that plan there's Coton Court and a lodge. And just looking at other plans, with reference to those buildings, the entranceway, I'm just wondering whether it is further west than that crescent shown on that. The plan that might be helpful to refer to is I've gone to the registered park and garden plan that was in Mr. Wilson's appendices to his proof, which was CD 2601 APPW2, page 11, and those the buildings, some of those buildings on the other side of the road at Coton Court appear in different configurations to those shown on the yellow plan, but the entranceway appears to be more directly opposite Coton Court, whereas the crescent-shaped feature, if we call it that, appears to be opposite the easternmost of those buildings. I could be wrong in my interpretation, but I just wanted to double-check that.
Well, you could well be right, sir, but can we just check that?
Yeah,
I'm not going to respond immediately.
And I think if you do check it, as I say, I don't think it changes either the point you were making nor Mr. Littlewood's response to that. But I think if there is a change, if we could just raise it whilst you're talking to Mr. Littlewood, I don't think we need to go over the points again, because my understanding was that we've understood Mr. Littlewood's response and we understood your questions to him.
Yep.
So.
But my questions were asking about the existing green crescent area,
Yeah.
not where it's shown on that particular map, whether or not it's in the same place. They were asking about the green crescent area.
Yeah. It was just, I think, because there was a bit of to and fro, you used that as an illustration, I think. So, thank you. Okay, thank you. And Mrs. Cameron, yesterday, on Friday, just before you started cross-examining Mr. Littlewood, you helpfully set out the areas that you were going to ask, just to help ourselves and everybody else. Could you just summarise just those headlines of what you've got left to cross-examine Mr. Littlewood on, please?
Yes, sir. Greenbelt,
Greenbelt, yeah.
veteran trees, Section 19 certificate, planning balance.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And in that case, I think if I can hand over to you, Mr. Cameron.
Thanks, sir. Good morning, Mr. Littlewood. So Greenbelt. Can we go in your proof, please, to 6.1 on page 12, and there's a table. And the table that you set out below 6.1 has 3 columns. Sub-area, LUC 2021 parcels. Development in these parcels is rated as being likely to cause the following levels of harm. Do you rely on this assessment for the purposes of your own assessment in relation to the proposed busway?
I think the point I've made in Power 6.1 of my proof is that the scheme passes through an area of high quality green belt, and that's the basis of which I've used to qualify that statement.
So going back to the question, do you use the LUC assessment and the ratings? Does it form part of your assessment in relation to the busway? And that's capable of a yes or no answer, please.
It forms part of my overall assessment, as I said, at 6.1.
Yes. And so therefore, when carrying out your assessment, have you proceeded on the basis that the busway development is likely to cause the levels of harm set out in that table?
Not necessarily, no.
Well, why do you put the table in?
Well, I put the table in, as I said at the start, because I've made a statement saying the scheme passes through an area of high quality greenbelt, as described in the greenbelt assessment, and
Yeah.
I've then gone on to describe that and use the table to make
Yeah.
that point.
But the table, the right-hand column, is not describing the quality of the greenbelt, but the effect of development on it.
Yes,
Is
that's
that
correct,
right?
yes.
And are you relying on that assessment when putting forward your assessment of the impact of the busway on the greenbelt?
It's part of the overall assessment.
Right. And let's just see how it's part of the overall assessment. That column there has development in these parcels is rated as being likely. Now those are they your levels of harm on basis of the busway, or are they LUC's levels of harm?
LUC's levels of harm.
And they, if we go to the LUC report, which is in your Appendix 3, and for those who've got it in the PDF, it starts at page 553.
Sorry,
And-
I'm using paper copy. Hang on, just bear with me a second.
If you've got a paper copy, so have I. So it's just Appendix 3. Do you have your Appendix 3? Looks so you do, those
I
green
look at
bits.
this do, I'm just trying to find it out.
Okay. Right,
Yeah, I think I'm there.
good. Right, can we go to CTP3, if you've got the paper copy? And I think you'll find this on page 536 in the PDF. Do you have that?
I've
And
got
you'll see there's a
CTP3.
heading, Notes on Harm Ratings.
Yeah.
And all harm ratings are for the release of land as an expansion of an existing inset area. Therefore, where a parcel does not lie immediately adjacent to the settlement edge, it is assumed that some intervening land will also be released, although no assumptions are made regarding what land that will be. So, is this right that this report, this LUC report, is considering the impact on the greenbelt of releasing land for the expansion of the settlement? That's what it's doing, isn't it?
Yes.
And so the harm ratings are the harm that would arise from an expansion of Coton, correct?
Or yes.
Or part expansion of
Yeah.
Coton. So this is the harm rating that would arise from housing and other development from expansion of Coton, is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
And so the harm ratings assume built development, whereas what we are concerned with here when considering impact on the greenbelt is a busway. It's an entirely different form of development, isn't it?
It is still a form of development.
Yes, it's a form of development, but it's entirely different. And therefore, would you agree that you can't rely on harm ratings based on expansion of the settlement when considering any harm to the greenbelt arising from a busway? They're not, those ratings are not directly applicable, are they?
Well, I don't think I've used them in that sense. I just tried to point out the general principle and the risk to the greenbelt in this particular location. And I think if you look at particularly as the busway passes close to Coton, and also does to Hardwick, it creates that severance of parcels which could potentially lead to the expansion of Coton. So I don't think using them as a broad tool to assess the potential impact of the development is completely wrong. But I accept your point.
You accept that it's not appropriate to apply ratings which assess the impact of built development as an expansion of a settlement when you're considering a busway. That's agreed, isn't it? They're not directly applicable.
No.
Thank you. Now let's have a look at your assessment, and we go to page 15 of your proof, 6.6 to 6.8. And you refer at 6.6 to the applicant's Greenbelt assessment, which we've got as CD 118. And you refer to section 7.2, which we can turn up. But do you accept the conclusions that are reached at paragraph 7.2 of that Greenbelt assessment?
In the sense that I've set out there in my proof of evidence that it recognises the scheme would conflict with PPF Greenbelt purposes 3 and 4 and Cambridge Greenbelt purposes 1 and 2.
Yes, but is that agreed between us?
I assume that it is.
Well,
yes. Yeah.
I'm asking you. So that is agreed. Thank you. And so let's just, so the extent of the conflict and the purposes with which the scheme conflicts is agreed. We then move on to very special circumstances. And if we look at your 6.7, we find your analysis. And you, in effect, say that you don't consider that very special circumstances exist. You say that at 6.8. And I'd just like to examine why you say that. So 6.7, you say the creation of a new transport corridor will inevitably lead to a significant increase in pressure for new development along it, for example, at Hardwick, Madingley Mulch and Coton. So that's point 1. Now, do you agree that any harm that arises from future development at the locations you identify, Hardwick, Madingley Mulch and Coton, would be assessed as and when planning applications are made for such development?
That's correct, yes.
And the mere fact that there is a busway does not inevitably lead to planning permission being granted for development in the Greenbelt, does it?
No, it's not, but it makes it more certain that development proposals will come forward for development on that land.
But what it doesn't do is make it more certain that those proposals will be permitted. They will have to be considered on their merits, won't they?
That's correct. It creates a risk, is what I'm saying.
A risk.
Yeah.
But there isn't a direct relationship between the busway and that development, is there? Because there's an intervening stage, and that intervening stage is the appropriate planning authorities have to make a decision.
That's correct.
So any harm that arises from those proposals doesn't arise directly from this scheme because there's an intervening stage where somebody has to make a decision. Is that agreed?
That's correct. The point I'm making here is it creates a risk, whereas the CPPF alternative doesn't.
Right. And then we have the other argument that you put forward at 6.8, the very special circumstances do not exist because the CPPF alternative can meet the planning policy requirements and deliver similar benefits. Now, and it must follow that if the CPP alternative is not deliverable, then the argument that you put there falls away because it wouldn't deliver the planning policy requirements and similar benefits if it can't be delivered, would it?
That's correct, but as we've heard, there's also East West Rail would potentially meet the needs of the scheme, and also change to the Girton interchange.
So the two arguments that you put for very special circumstances not existing, one is what you call a risk factor, and two depends on your alternative being deliverable. Correct?
Correct, or another alternative.
Thank you. Let's move on then from Greenbelt to veteran trees, and I'm not going to ask you about, you're not an arboriculturalist, and I don't ask you about arboricultural matters. It's the policy approach that I want to ask you about. Now, 717 of your evidence, the scheme would bisect the area of trees adjacent to the M11 and bisect the mature orchard at Coton, as well as remove veteran orchard trees. And you then say 718 mitigation is reliant on replacement trees, and it's the veteran tree point I want to ask you about, because you say the landscape value of mature and veteran trees cannot be replaced. Now, if the veteran trees can be translocated, they will not be lost and will not need to be replaced, will they?
That's correct. I think there's significant doubt that they can be successfully translocated and survive, and understand from the evidence, oral evidence that Mr. Woodfield gave.
Yeah. But that's not your evidence, is it? You're not the tree expert.
No, but I'm relying on what tree experts have told me.
But there are, apart from Mr. Alder, there's no other arboricultural expert who's given evidence to this inquiry, is there?
No, perhaps I should say at this point that we did consider having an arboricultural expert, and so I did spend some time phoning around the country to some of those.
Yes, I don't want to hear what you've been told by somebody else. I just want to hear your evidence. Well, there is no other arboricultural expert who's giving or going to give evidence before this inquiry, is there?
That's the case. In that case, my evidence is based on the conversations that I had with experts around the country.
Well, that's not something that we can test. We don't know who they are. We don't know what they said, and they're not here, are they?
Okay, fair enough, yes.
No. So let's just go to the National Planning Policy Framework, if we can, which is Core Document 8.1. And
sorry, Mr.
Here's Core Document 8.1.
So NPPF.
NPPF,
yeah.
I'm sure you're familiar with it. You've probably got your own copy. It's page 56 I want to go to.
Yeah.
So if we look up 193C, development resulting in the loss or deterioration of irreplaceable habitat such as veteran trees should be refused unless, I'm just going to look at the first part, if Mr. Alder's evidence is accepted, there won't be loss or deterioration of veteran trees, so one wouldn't have to go on to the second part of the sentence, would one?
No, but I think there's considerable doubt that they won't be lost, and there's certainly no one is saying there would definitely be deterioration.
No, Mr. Alder said there wouldn't be deterioration. So let's just, but that's not your evidence, so let's go on to the second part, in the event that the inspectors take a different view. Unless there are wholly exceptional reasons and a suitable compensation strategy exists. Now, the exceptional reasons test, do I find that assessed or analysed in your evidence?
No.
And if we look at the footnote 70, one of the exceptional reasons that is contemplated, it's given as an example, is where you have an infrastructure project which is to be consented by an order under the Transport and Works Act, where the public benefit would clearly outweigh the loss or deterioration of habitat. So all I'd like to ask you is that, as a matter of principle, is the policy approach that should be followed to consider whether there are exceptional reasons, and in doing so, whether the public benefit would clearly outweigh the loss or deterioration of the veteran trees? That's the correct policy approach.
That's correct.
Thank you. And now we can move on to the Section 19 certificate, if we can, please. And can we take up, we're going to just get the documents in front of us if we can, and I can give you the, so it's core document 11602, which are the existing site plans we're going to go to first, and we need to go to sheet 14, which is on PDF page 16.
I think this is going to be one of those that takes a while to load.
Yes, they do. They're quite large documents.
Sorry, can you give me the core document reference again, please?
Yes, it's CD 1-1602, sheet 14 on PDF page 16. And we could probably do also with the CD 112.1 as well, but I don't want to ask anybody to open too many documents at once.
I'm struggling to get anything up at all.
I think that's probably a combination of everyone trying to open a large document at the same time.
Well, Mr. Henderson's made a suggestion which may save a lot of document opening. Hey. Yeah. If you alternative then, let's go to core document 122, which is the application for the certificate. We're still going to have to go to the proposed drawings in a moment, but this will save a bit of time.
So 122.
Yeah. So 122, page 167. We can do it at the we can
It's
then don't have to open.
It's
PDF
167. 167 or 168?
167. There should be a drawing there which shows the land to be taken and the land to be given in exchange.
Yeah, is that sheet number 14 of 17?
You're in the. You're not in.
Yeah, it should be page 168, I think.
Sorry, which document are you in?
CD 122.
Oh, I see. Okay, 17. Anyway, we should have. It is this. Try 172. Try 172. It actually says 167 in mine. That's why I'm getting confused. You got 172?
Yeah.
And then that should have a drawing which shows the land to be taken, which is plots 14153 and 14154, which are parcels of land on the side of the M11. Do you have that?
Yeah.
Do you both have that? So it looks so Mr. Clegg's got it.
We're going through the moment.
Yeah. When everybody's got that, I thought this was all going to be relatively quick, section 19 point, but it never is when you get to these documents. So, Mr. Littlewood, just so that we can orientate ourselves, the proposal is that the land on the eastern side of the M11 is the land to be taken, compulsorily acquired open space, and then the land to be given in exchange is, you can see it on the left hand side of the plan to the west of the M11. And that, so let's just keep this in mind. Weren't quite the sheets I was going to go to. Can we then, with that in mind, go to the CPPF objection, which is core document 24031. So I don't want everybody to have to open up too many different documents.
Oh,
But
sorry.
that's
Sorry, what is that?
24-031.
Sorry, can you read that out to me? And I'll
Yes, CD 24-03-1. Letter from the CPPF 18th of March 2025.
Sorry, I'm struggling to find it on my sheet.
Well, that shouldn't take a long time to download.
No, I'm just struggling to find it, sorry. Okay, yeah.
Right. And if we look at the, under the bold line on page 1, Cambridge past, present and future do not consider that the exchanged land is equally advantageous to the public, and a further search for a site should take place. And then if we go to the next paragraph, we find out the basis on which CPPF say that. And you go to the second sentence of the next paragraph, the area of replacement site might be deliverable. So deliverability not an issue, is that right?
Yeah.
But we do not believe this is an appropriate location to encourage public access and dwell time because it is an isolated and unsurveyed area that includes a balancing pond and is adjacent to a motorway and a steep embankment. Now, the question which we're considering is whether it's equally advantageous. And you've given two main reasons why you think it isn't. And that is because it's isolated and unsurveyed, reason one, and adjacent to a motorway and steep embankment. Now, let's just take those in turn. Now, this is a comparative exercise. And if we go, in order to judge this, to the proposed site plans, and I'm hesitate because we're now going to get bogged down in opening these up, but they should be CD 11604 sheet 14, PDF page 16.
Sorry, what's that again? CD?
11604 sheet 14. And I think, sirs, you've got this in paper and you've got it in front of you.
Is that the proposed site plans?
That's it. Well done, sheet 14. Now, surveillance, etc. point. At the moment, the land that's to be taken is beside a motorway, isn't it? It's immediately beside the M11.
It is.
And it's a area which includes woodland. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yes?
Yes.
And is there any surveillance of that area at the moment?
Yes, because there's a public footpath runs right next to it.
There's a public footpath
Yeah.
that goes through it.
Yeah.
And if you then look at the proposed plan, there will be an active travel route immediately to the north of this land. Correct?
That's
Further from the motorway than the existing. You've got an area of land which footpath goes through. In the future, if you have the active travel route, you'll have an area of land which is accessible from the active travel route. And do you agree that, from terms of enjoyment of open space, it's better to be further away from a motorway than closer to it?
yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
And the scheme would allow for delivery of the local plan strategy. We agreed that?
Yes.
Yes. It would also allow the delivery of the emerging local plan strategy. So far as the first proposals are concerned, we don't know about the new local plan. Correct? And those are all powerful factors in favour of the scheme, aren't they?
Yes, providing there isn't an alternative.
Yes. Now, in your table, have you adopted the same categories as Mr. sensical, which are substantial, significant and limited? Have you done the same exercise?
We have. There was one area where I think we put moderate because we weren't sure what other categories there might be available, and we didn't quite fit that one into his categories.
Right.
But that was our attempt to do that. Generally, you're correct. That's what we tried to do.
Yeah. And you, in terms of housing, you recognise substantial weight in facilitating the delivery of Bourne Airfield, subject to your point that the condition could be varied at some later stage. Is that right?
Correct.
Now, so you give substantial weight to Bourne Airfield, but Cambourne West, you there say in your table no planning condition in place. I'm looking at page 3 of your supplementary note. And defer to the evidence of Edward Lee to show that no evidence to demonstrate housing development is dependent on the scheme in transport terms, and you dispute that West Cambridge is dependent. And so you then give a limited ranking to that.
That's correct.
Now, in terms of Cambourne West, let's just try and take this compendiously, and we can go to the documents if we need to and the detail of it. But in relation to both Cambourne West and indeed West Cambridge, at the time that planning permission was granted, the applicant entered into a planning obligation separate one in relation to each site, by which they would make a contribution towards the cost of the applicant's scheme. Is that right?
That's correct. I don't know whether it was the applicant's scheme or a scheme. I couldn't say without detail, but...
All right. Well, let's make sure that I don't take that incorrectly. So we'll take the example of West Cambridge, because we've got the and Cambourne West, we've got the planning obligation. We can take either, but let's go to core document 410, which is the West Cambridge planning obligation. Well, it's a massive document, so it's going to take forever to download, but it's slightly, it's 30 something megabytes. We just if you've got that. So there's West Cambridge, but we've also got the planning obligation for Cambourne West, which is 408. We need to go to page 7 once you've got 410 open. Is it taking a long time to open?
No, I'm there.
410, page 7. So the Greater Cambridge Partnership contribution, £9.29 million, payable to the County Council towards the C2C scheme or such other strategic transport infrastructure scheme agreed between the parties which achieves the same or broadly equivalent transport benefits for the development. Do you have that? So that was a £9.29 million contribution, West Cambridge development, towards this specific scheme or such other scheme which achieves the same or broadly equivalent transport benefits.
Yeah, that's
right.
That's what I suggested.
That's what you were
yes.
referring to.
Yeah.
Now, the local planning authority could only have taken this contribution into account as a reason for granting permission if it met the tests in the Community Infrastructure Levy Regulations, Regulation 1222. Is that right? Are you familiar with that test?
Yeah, I think we are saying the same thing. Is that it is our joint point that there is a need for public transport infrastructure improvements in this corridor, and therefore a development, whether that's West Cambridge or Cambourne, is required to make a contribution to that, but it's not specific to the applicant's scheme. It could be the CPPF alternative scheme.
But what it means is if the applicant of those two schemes, and we can look at Cambourne West, similar provision there, if that is necessary to make the development acceptable in planning terms, it's a scheme which should not go ahead without it, isn't it?
That's not necessarily how Section 106 works. It is often Section 106 is taken for developers for particular schemes. It's not always spent. It can be given. It can be given back. I'm going to refer here to Edward Lee's evidence that although there's a Section 106 contribution, it doesn't prevent the development from going ahead. If the scheme was built out and no public transport improvement took place, and the Section 106 money would be returned, is my understanding.
Yeah, but you're the planning witness, aren't you? You're familiar with Regulation 1222 of the Community Infrastructure Levy Regulations, are you?
I wouldn't say that I would know it off my heart.
Well, there are three criteria which apply if a planning obligation is to be a reason for granting permission, and one of those is whether it's necessary to make the development acceptable in planning terms. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
And are you familiar with the MPPF guidance on this issue?
I'm sure you can refresh me.
Yes. Go to para 58 in the MPPF, please. Core document 8.1.
Para, sorry.
58, page 16.
Yes, I'm familiar with that.
Okay. Planning obligations must only be sought where they meet all of the following tests. And there they're set out, mirroring the Community Infrastructure Levy Regulations. Necessary to make the development acceptable in planning terms, directly related to the development, and fairly and reasonably related in scale and kind to the development. So if you take the first one, the view must have been taken by the planning authority in relation to both West Cambridge and Cambourne West that a contribution to the C2C scheme or equivalent was necessary to make those developments acceptable in planning terms. Do you accept that?
I accept that yes, I have to accept that.
Yeah, thank you. And if a contribution to a scheme is necessary, it means that that scheme is not acceptable absent the contribution, and therefore not acceptable absent the scheme.
It does, but there's nothing to stop those developments being built out.
No.
There's no limit, there's no planning condition limit. I mean, I know you had this conversation with Mr. Lee, and I don't necessarily think we need to repeat that. I'm relying on the evidence that Mr. Lee gave in respect to that.
But despite the fact that you agree that a transport scheme is necessary to make the development acceptable, you nonetheless give limited weight to the benefits to be derived from those schemes. That's the position.
Because I don't believe it's wholly dependent upon that. There's no, as I say, there's nothing to stop those developments from going ahead. And also in my response to Mr. Sensicle's note, I pointed out in particular in relation to West Cambridge as why that wouldn't be the case in terms of other housing developments that would feed employers into that. So no, I don't agree that is
You don't.
West Cambourne and West Cambridge are truly dependent on the development to go ahead.
Do you agree that delivery of the academic and employment floor space at West Cambridge is a beneficial development?
Yes.
And do you agree that the development of housing at West Cambourne is a beneficial development?
Yes.
So if those developments are facilitated by this scheme, and you agree that some type of scheme is necessary, that is a substantial benefit, isn't it? If it's facilitated by this scheme.
I just think the benefit is more limited here. It's not the same as Bourne Airfield. It's not unlocking that development.
But if the development, you agree that both developments are beneficial, you agree that a transport scheme is needed for both developments. So if this transport scheme enables, and I take your point on dependency, if it enables those developments to go ahead, that would be a substantial benefit, wouldn't it? If there is that linkage.
I'm just questioning the substantial as to the degree of the linkage.
Yeah, but if there is the linkage, then it's substantial, but we disagree, or you disagree, on the linkage.
That's
Is
correct.
that fair?
That's correct, yes.
Thank you. Now, I'd just like to have a look at...
Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Cameron.
Yeah.
I'm conscious that you may be coming to an end. I'm conscious also that Mr. Littlewood has been going a little while, but it may be that you...
There isn't a lot more to go. I mean, there's probably 10 minutes, so 15 if you want to have a break.
As for Mr. Littlewood, I don't know whether he needs a break now or whether he...
If it's no more than 10 minutes.
Well, I'm not going to be absolutely tied to 10 minutes, so it's a rough...
I'm just conscious...
Should we just take a...
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm conscious that you haven't got much more.
Yes.
But let's just take a break, just in case things take over.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll make it almost quarter to 11. So we'll take a quarter. Okay, we'll take a, as long as that's okay with you. We'll take a 10-minute break, and we'll resume at 10:55. Thank you. Cameron, please.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Littlewood, still on the planning balance, and we're on your table, and I think you alluded to this, but let's just check this. Would you agree that when you're carrying out a balancing exercise, as with anything, as if one imagines one has a scales, you have pluses and minuses, and then you put weight on the scales, and then you form a judgment on the overall balance? I mean, that's... Yes. And so let's just just examine how you've done this. And if we go to page 5, you've got the active travel path, or page 5 of your document, your supplementary note, and Mr. Sensical has that in as a significant benefit. You have it in as a significant harm. Now, just to understand this, as far as your position on the active travel route is concerned, you say in your proof, if we go to 7.28, you agree that there's a need for an active travel route between Cambourne and Cambridge, correct? And if you go to 6.3 of your proof, and you're dealing there with the very special circumstances, but at 6.34, social benefits of the scheme, the CPP alternative includes a better active travel route. So an active travel route is, in your words, a social benefit. Is that right? Yeah. So here, when you do your balancing exercise, you mark the active travel route down as a negative, significant harm, but you agree that there's a need for it and that it's a social benefit. So the active travel route should be in the benefits side of the equation, shouldn't it? And then you might wish to put in the negative side of the equation, the impact that arises as a result of providing that route. That's how you should do it.
You could do it that way. I guess I've tried to do that way in the comments that I made clear that that's the basis. I think this particular active travel route would have significant harm.
Yeah.
This is, the active travel route was proposed by the applicant in its local transport and local cycling and walking infrastructure delivery plan.
But if you're going to do a fair balancing exercise, you can't put something which you acknowledge to be a benefit in as a harm. What you do is you say, in order to achieve this benefit, it causes harm to Coat and Orchard, and then you weigh it up. But that's not what you've done, is it? You just put it in as a harm.
Yes, I have.
Yeah, and that's a mistake, isn't it?
Consider it.
Well, I'm asking you. If you're doing this fairly, you've got to put the plus in for the social benefit, and then you put the minus in for the impact on the orchard. That's a fair way of doing it, isn't it?
Yeah, okay. But
Thank
if
you.
you've done it that way, then again, you know, as we do with the housing, we might not say so significant because it can be delivered through another way.
Yeah,
So,
but it still goes in the benefits section. Thank you. And can I just ask you, paragraph 9 of your note, page 11, right at the end, you complain that Mr. Sensical has not considered the impact on landowners as part of his assessment, but if planning is concerned with the development and use of land, is not concerned with landowners as such, but the use of land. Is that what you're referring to, or are you referring to landowners?
I think I was referring to landowners in terms of the impact on the requirement of compulsory purchase order. Ms. Gaisley will speak for herself when she talks about the impact on her and her business.
So this is, but then, as you say, it's the impact on the business or impact on the farming enterprise, because planning is not to do with individuals, it's to do with use of land, isn't it? That's if you're doing a planning balance.
You are, but there's also
Thank you.
a social benefit that's included in that, and that includes the impacts on communities and society.
Right. So it's not on landowners as such, but it's on what landowners do with their land.
Yes.
Thank you. Now, do you agree that even if the CPPF scheme is considered to be, as an alternative, to be deliverable, and there's a difference between us on that, if you're carrying out the balance, it's right to take into account, as a matter in the balance, any delay to delivery of a scheme if you don't make the order and you then have to look for an alternative. That delay is relevant, isn't it? Well, it could be, but when you say it could be, let's just examine that. You're seeking to persuade the inspectors to recommend that the order be not made because there is an alternative, but informing their judgment and recommendation to the Secretary of State, they can't ignore the consequences of declining to make the order, can they? You have to consider what the consequences are, and they would include delay. Yeah. And that's not something that you've taken into account in your balance, is it?
Well, other than the fact that this really relates to the Bourne airfield development, there's a development that's not planned to be built out. It's planned to be built out over 15 years. So there's not going to be 3,500 houses there, within a very short period of time. They're probably only going to build them out at the rate 200 a year. So actually, by the time you deliver the CPPF alternative, you probably still wouldn't have reached the level where you would require that scheme. As Mr. Lee has pointed out, you could probably extend the planning conditions to allow more development as a result of other changes, such as the impact of the pandemic and the construction of the dual carriageway at the M2A. So I don't consider that delay in this instance in the planning balance to be significant.
Yep. But it's something that should be taken into account in the planning balance. Agreed, yes. And one of the factors to consider when considering delay, we've got Mr. Lee said it would take up to 5 years following a decision being made after consultation. Mr. Baker gave 5 to 10 years. That would, if one had consultation, let's say a decision was made on the order next summer, 2026. By the time the inspectors have reported, it's gone to the Secretary of State. Secretary of State's made a decision. So we have 2026. We then have consultation. We then have up to 5 years. The delay, and that's on Mr. Lee's figures.
That wasn't Mr. Lee's evidence.
Up to 5 years, he said.
Well, his evidence was far more nuanced than that. His position was that some of the scheme could be developed without consultation in the highway, so it wasn't simply the case that his evidence was the scheme would take 5 years. It was far more nuanced than that.
Yes, and then we get to the bridge over the M11. And
Yeah, fine.
Yeah.
I mean, there was evidence given on that specific, if the question is directed to that specific part of the development, then fine, but he also gave evidence as to the significance of that taking the time and whether that would delay the benefits associated with the scheme and all of that sort of stuff. So
Yes.
I think it's
So that's
slightly
why I
more
put-
complicated than
Put up to 5 years, which is what he said. But let's, for the moment, assume, Mr. Littlewood, that it's consultation and then 5 years. And I appreciate Mr. Lee's up to 5 years. That would take us beyond the local plan period, wouldn't it, which goes to 2031.
It would, but one assumes that would be superseded by the
Yeah. So to defer development, which is allocated in the current local plan, to beyond the local plan period would undermine the local plan strategy, wouldn't it?
I don't believe that is. As I just explained, the build-out rate of Bourne is, around 200 a year. So we're talking actually, a relatively small number of buildings, and it's worth noting that the applicant scheme can't open until 2029. So
Yeah.
the difference we're talking is actually a relatively small delay for a relatively small amount of development,
Yeah.
possibly a few hundred houses.
But the applicant scheme can come forward within the plan period, whereas if you had delay past the end of the plan period, would that be undesirable if there was delay past the end of the plan period?
No, because I think you'd have to take that in the overall planning for Cambridge. So with Cambridge is planning for
Yeah.
24,000 houses, this is about, we're talking about a couple of hundred here. So in the scheme of things and the impact on the local plan, I think you have to put that in the round.
But
on this particular narrow.
But it may be in the round, but it's a negative factor in the round, isn't
I
it?
don't think it's a significant negative.
Well, it may not be significant, but it's negative, isn't it?
It's minor, yes.
But it's negative.
I disagree with that.
You disagree that delay is negative?
I disagree that the sort of delay that we're talking about here is significant in any way, shape or form.
No, that wasn't the question. It's negative.
A delay could be considered as negative, but in this
Thank you.
instance, I don't think so.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Littlewood, for bearing with me. Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron. Ms. Drabkin-Rater.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, Mr. Littlewood. So 3 topics to cover with you. First, I'm going to look at the NPPF and some of the policy principles on transport infrastructure, then need, and finally the spatial strategy in the adopted and emerging local plans. So if we could take up the NPPF and section 9 first, the CD 801 PDF page 31. Paragraph 109.
So, paragraph
109 on page 31. Yeah. So we heard about the vision-led approach from Mr. Lee last week, and I just wanted to look at some of the policies dealing with this. So paragraph 109 tells us that transport issues should be considered from the earliest stages of plan making and development proposals using a vision-led approach to identify transport solutions that deliver well-designed, sustainable and popular places. And that includes, at D, realising opportunities from existing or proposed transport infrastructure and changing transport technology and usage, for example, in relation to the scale, location or density of development that can be accommodated. And then we see further in terms of the implementation of the vision-led approach at paragraph 110, a bit further down the page, the start of that paragraph, the planning system should actively manage growth in support of these objectives, and significant development should be focused on locations which are or can be made sustainable through limiting the need to travel and offering a genuine choice of transport modes. And again, at paragraph 111C, planning policies should identify and protect, where there is robust evidence, sites and routes which could be critical in developing infrastructure to widen transport choice and realise opportunities for large-scale development. So just considering these paragraphs that I've read out, part of the vision-led approach is about ensuring a genuine choice of modes, isn't it? And that also includes how planning authorities should be planning for patterns of growth, doesn't it? Okay, that's that topic. So now moving on to need. You confirmed with Mr. Cameron last week and again today that CPPF agrees there is a compelling need to improve transport between Cambourne and Cambridge. Yep. And that's a current need, isn't it?
Well, it depends on, you know, Mr. Lee's evidence is that post-pandemic, actually, there isn't a significant amount of delay on buses between Cambourne and Cambridge. In fact, for most of the day, they run freely. So if you're saying that there is currently need without any development, further development, then I think that's a question.
But in terms of how you put it in your proof and in all of your discussion with Mr. Cameron, you've used the present tense. You've said there is a compelling need.
Well,
So,
as in relation to planning policy, and if there will be more development at Bourne Airfield, then that creates the need, but not as currently. That's not what I'm saying, that's not our position.
but were development at Cambourne West and Bourne Airfield to be completed and occupied prior to any transport solution coming forward, the need would be there. You say it's not there currently. And we also know that there is further development planned at Cambourne in the emerging local plan. The first proposals refer to around 2,000 homes, don't they? And further, we know that since the first proposals were published, the council's work on the emerging local plan has showed an even higher job forecast and associated housing need for the Cambridge area, hasn't it?
It has got that sector's challenge.
And were you here for Mr. Freeman's evidence on day 3 of the inquiry? So we heard from Mr. Freeman that the intention of the Cambridge Growth Company is for significantly more growth in Cambridge to 2050 than what's currently envisaged in the emerging local plan to 2041. That's what he said, isn't it?
It is possibly a construct of looking at a long timescale.
And then in terms of the CPPF position, we looked at your statement of common ground with the applicant with Mr. Lee, so we don't need to necessarily turn that up, but that's CD 2920. But in that, it's confirmed that CPPF and Coton Parish Council also accept there is a need to improve accessibility in the Greater Cambridge region to support economic growth.
Correct.
And you also confirmed that in cross-examination with Mr. Cameron.
Correct.
So you did make some comments regarding the scale of growth with Mr. Cameron, although you said you weren't challenging the government policy on growth. But unlike other objectors, for example, Friends of the Cam, CPRE, you and CPPF don't challenge the scheme on the basis that economic and housing growth should not take place in Cambridgeshire generally.
No.
And you also don't say that that growth shouldn't take place at or around Cambourne specifically.
No, I think our position would be around the scale of growth that's planned, particularly from the Cambridge Growth Company, and whether that can be considered a sustainable development given there isn't enough support, water and some other infrastructure to deliver that. And so unless solutions can be found to some of those problems, then that growth's unsustainable and shouldn't go ahead. I think that's our position.
But what you do say at paragraph 6.7, and we had a look at this earlier today, you say that, sorry, if you want to go to your proof of evidence, 6.7, page 15.
Yeah.
You argue there that the creation of a new transport corridor will inevitably lead to significant increases in pressure for new development at Hardwick, Madingley, Mulch and Coton. And you raise that as a concern because of what you say is the risk of future harm to the Greenbelt.
Yeah.
I just want to have a look at those areas on a plan, and I think in the CPPF objection there's quite a helpful plan. So that is CD2 object 251.
Sorry, where are we going there?
So page 2, figure 1, just to see really where these, just to have on a plan where these areas are that you've identified.
In which document are we in? Is that in my...
The CPPF objection, so CD2 OBJ 251.
Okay.
It's also in Mr. Lee's proof of evidence. We did look at that with Mr. Cameron, if that's an easier reference. But
It might be.
it's the CPPF diagram of the proposed routes of the C2C busway and the alternative, just showing their different routes.
I can recall it. I can't find it, but I can recall it.
Yeah, no, I think do take it up. So it's at Mr. Lee's proof of evidence, PDF page 70 as well, if that's a more helpful reference.
What CD number are we at? That's what I'm struggling with.
Okay, I'll have to look at that up, sorry. So it should be CD 26. 2610W31.
Yeah, okay.
And there should be a diagram at page 70 just showing the routes of the busway
Yeah.
and the alternative and East-West Rail as well.
I've got that, yeah.
Yep. And just in terms of the section of the applicant's scheme that passes Hardwick, west of the A1303, you don't object to that part of the scheme, do you?
No.
And if the CPPF alternative were implemented, it would include that section of the C2C scheme, wouldn't it, to join up to Cambourne?
It would. The area of land that I was particularly focused on in terms of future risks for development is the area which, if you go east of Hardwick, so essentially where the CPPF alternative diverts from the GCP scheme, the scheme essentially severs a field there, and so you end up with a parcel of land which is between the busway, the road and another road, which would seem to me to be particularly vulnerable to development, particularly as you'll know, as you're representing the planning authority, that we have had a number of planning applications come in for greenbelt land in the Hardwick area.
Is that contiguous to any current development?
It's not, but it's relatively close.
But in terms of any pressure for new development at Hardwick Village, that would also occur with the CPPF alternative, wouldn't it?
Yes, it's correct. That wasn't really, when I referenced Hardwick, that was really that piece of land that I was referencing.
Okay, and just in terms of your reference to Madingley Mulch, can I just clarify what you're referring to there? Is that the area around the roundabout, or is that a different area?
Well, I think it's a different area really, is that you do have some development at Madingley Mulch. Roundabout there, there's a sort of small business park. You know, again, you're severing the field parcels there, so you end up with potentially land that's not viable for farming next to a piece of development. You know, that's exactly the sort of place where, you know, developer, landowner would come forward and say, you know, I'd like to build on this, basically. And the fact that potentially they might be arguing for a bus stop or something else on the busway for that purpose. So, you know, as per the conversation with Mr. Cambourne here, you know, it's about risk really, and all I'm flagging here is that there's a greater risk of that kind of development coming forward as a result of the busway scheme compared to the CPPF alternative.
But in terms of the CPPF alternative going through Madingley Mulch, that could also encourage development in that area, couldn't it?
They wouldn't, because it wouldn't sever the parcel of land.
And in terms of your what you say about this potential development, you say that's a risk to the green belt that the inspectors need to take into account as part of their assessment?
I think it's a risk of the scheme that needs to be considered, yes.
But on the other side of the scale, if that is the case, and there were more housing development, that would also be a potential economic benefit of the scheme, wouldn't it, in terms of delivering more housing or employment growth? That's something they would also have to take into account if they were taking into account the risk.
They would, but that development would then have a greater impact on landscape visual impact, ecology and other things as well.
And I think, as you confirmed with Mr. Cambourne, those are all matters that the planning authority would have to take into account at the time.
That's correct.
Okay, moving on now to the spatial strategy. And first I just want to turn to paragraph 7.10 of your proof of evidence, page 17. And you refer there to the intrinsic and close relationship between the city and its rural setting as a centre of learning set in an open and rural landscape, and that the city has long prided itself as being a compact city with well-defined and abrupt urban edges separating the built form from its rural landscape setting. And you say that's maintained by Greenbelt policy. But it's also maintained, isn't it, by the spatial strategy in the local plans of limiting Greenbelt release by, for example, providing for housing in existing or new settlements beyond the Greenbelt.
That's correct, yes.
And I think, as you agreed with Mr. Cameron, that's an essential part of the local plan strategy, isn't it?
It is, yes.
And without that, obviously, more greenbelt would be required to provide for housing and employment needs.
In strategic terms, i.e. if development is somewhere else and not next to the green belt, yes.
And as a matter of principle, in order for that kind of a strategy to be sustainable and not overly car dependent, you need high quality public transport connections to services and employment in Cambridge, don't you?
Yes.
And those connections need to be capable of supporting long-term growth so that the new settlements can grow sustainably, don't they?
Yes. Well, they need to have transport sufficient for their particular needs.
And that's why, for example, policies SS7 and SS8 for Bourne Airfield and Cambourne West require those high quality public transport measures between Cambourne and Cambridge.
That's correct.
And in response to a question from the Inspector, Mr. Underwood, Mr. Lee stated that those policies were examples of vision-led planning policies. Do you agree with that assessment?
I have no reason not to.
Sorry?
I have no reason not to. If I'm relying on the evidence from Mr. Lee.
And that's because they, as we saw having looked at the MPPF, that's because they seek to provide the transport solutions to deliver a particular outcome, don't they? So by improving reliability of public transport service between Cambourne and Cambridge, they encourage a modal shift to sustainable transport modes.
Correct.
Then looking at the emerging plan and the spatial strategy of that plan, go back to your proof of evidence, paragraph 5.12. Page 11. You say at the end of paragraph 5.12, because the plan is still at the initial stages, it carries limited weight.
That's my understanding. Yeah.
But you agree that it is a material consideration for the inspectors?
Well, it is, yes, but it carries limited weight.
So if we could then turn it up, it's CD 604. And just go to page 29 to start with.
PDF page 29.
Yes, I think they're the same in this document, helpfully. So,
Yeah.
So you've obviously looked at this with Mr. Cameron, so I'm not going to repeat any points that he made, but I do have a few additional points. So just to put those points in context, here we're looking at policy SDS on the development strategy. And I want to look at what's said on the spatial strategy in this draft policy. So turning then to page 36. And we see the section headed spatial strategy at the bottom of that page. And that starts by discussing the adopted development strategy in the 2018 local plans. And then if we go down to page 38, we see the preferred option there, which is the paragraph just above the bullets in the middle of the page on page 38, beginning drawing on our evidence. And there we see, do you have that?
Yep.
Yeah. The preferred option is a blended strategy to meet a variety of needs and respond to opportunities provided by the sources of supply, and it's strongly influenced by a number of considerations, including reducing climate impacts through compact development, located to connect homes and jobs where active and sustainable travel can be maximised, best use of brownfield land, and making the best use of existed and committed key sustainable transport infrastructure, and supporting rural communities to thrive and sustain services. And then if we have a look on page 39, the first full paragraph, we see there the approach to the green belt.
Which paragraph?
First full paragraph. beginning, we do not consider.
Yeah.
So we see there the council's approach to the Greenbelt, which is that the housing needs alone do not provide the exceptional circumstances required to justify removing land from the Greenbelt. And towards the bottom of that paragraph, it's recognised in all but one case, we do not consider that such exceptional circumstances exist, but they may exist to justify limited release of Greenbelt at Cambridge Biomedical Campus. Do you see that?
Yeah.
So that's the position on Greenbelt. Then the next paragraph deals with settlements outside the Greenbelt, which we've already discussed in relation to the existing local plan. It refers to Northstone, Waterbeach and Bourne Airfield, which will continue to be built out through the new plan period and beyond. And then it says, the most sustainable location for strategic scale development away from Cambridge is to expand on existing development in the Cambourne area, taking advantage of the significant benefits provided by proposed East-West Rail, as well as the improvements already anticipated from the Cambourne to Cambridge scheme. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's new settlements. And then finally, on villages, the penultimate paragraph on page 39. Our evidence shows our villages should play only a limited role in meeting future development needs to support the delivery of a range of smaller sites and support the vitality of our villages. So that carries forward the strategy and the adopted local plans, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
And while the plan is emerging and carries limited weight, as you say, it continues a direction of travel for the Cambridge spatial strategy that's been going on for many years, hasn't it?
Yes.
And that strategy, and I've referred specifically to the Greenbelt as it's set out on that page, that also supports the protection of the identity of Cambridge as a compact city surrounded by Greenbelt, doesn't it?
Yes.
And in terms of the strategy of locating and expanding new settlements outside the Greenbelt in places where active and sustainable travel can be maximised, you don't say that strategy is wrong or should be changed, do you?
No.
Okay, then if we could look, then in terms of the role of Cambourne in the spatial strategy, we've already seen this is considered to be the most sustainable location for strategic scale development away from Cambridge. And in terms of that, the emerging plan recognises that both East-West Rail and Cambourne to Cambridge have a role to play, doesn't it?
It does. I guess there's a point here about, the status that this is at. That might be the council's position that it's the most sustainable location, but obviously the actual process of taking this plan forward, people may challenge that assumption. And I think our position also is that whilst the Greater Cambridge Partnerships Cambourne to Cambridge scheme can meet that need, so can the Cambridge PPF alternative.
And then in relation to the protection of the Greenbelt, again, if we go down to page 45, we see there's some further work undertaken by the councils, if you're there. So that's the paragraph just below the bullet points on page 45. And we see there that the councils identified a further blended spatial option that warranted testing, which was similar to the preferred option, with the exception that it did not include Cambourne and did not include site-specific locations on the edge of Cambridge in the Greenbelt. And the conclusion is in the following paragraph, or the outcome of that work. Whilst the edge of Cambridge Greenbelt sites performed in a similar way in many respects to Cambridge East, they would have significant Greenbelt impacts, and given the relatively good performance of Cambourne, which is not in the Greenbelt and would benefit from East-West Rail, there were considered to be no exceptional circumstances for releasing land on the edge of Cambridge to meet development needs as a matter of principle, and that spatial option was not preferred. So the proposal here to expand at Cambourne, that protects the edge of Cambridge sites in the Greenbelt that might otherwise need to be developed to provide for housing need, doesn't it?
That's correct.
And I've taken you to the paragraphs on villages and the approach in the Greenbelt. So notwithstanding the importance of Cambourne to Cambridge for the spatial strategy of the emerging plan, there isn't any corresponding proposal in the emerging plan to expand villages, for example, at Hardwick or Coton or for that development in the rural
There
area?
isn't a plan to do that, but that doesn't mean that it'll happen in real life. So as an example, on the edge of Stapleford on the southern side of Cambridge, a development proposal came forward for a retirement village in the Greenbelt. It was opposed by the councils, went through on appeal. So that's the sort of pressure that we're talking about here. It's not necessarily always within your control as a planning authority to determine those planning applications in the Greenbelt. And we have examples in Cambridge where you've objected and it's been overruled on appeal, and a development has taken place in the Greenbelt next to an existing settlement.
But in terms of the fear that is expressed at paragraph 6.7 of your proof of evidence regarding the pressure on the Greenbelt, that's not borne out by the emerging policy direction of travel in the emerging plan.
It's not the council's objective, no, but that's not the same as what happens in reality.
Okay, I now just want to look at some of the site-specific emerging policies. So if we have a look first at the emerging policy for West Cambridge, you refer to that in your note. That's at page 91 of this document.
Page 91 of.
Sorry, it's referred to in your note.
In the response to Mr. Sensical.
Yes. At paragraph 3, and then it's at 91 of the emerging local plan.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm at page 91.
Yeah, so at the bottom of the page, we see the proposed policy direction. The university, through the recent resolution to grant planning permission, has ambitions for the West Cambridge area to become an innovation district. This document from 2021, but since then, planning permission has been granted, and for the inspector's reference, that's at CD 405. For nearly 400,000 metres squared of academic and commercial floor space. Now, following that grant of outline planning permission, this area is likely to become an increasingly important employment location in Cambridge, isn't it?
Assuming that's built out and occupied, there is a lot of oversupply potentially of planning applications for employment space around Cambridge now.
And if you just go down to page 92, the bottom of the first paragraph, that states, as well as provision of high quality walking and cycling connections, development should maximise the opportunity provided by public transport improvements, such as the proposed Greater Cambridge Partnership Cambourne to Cambridge scheme.
Yes, and that would equally apply to the Cambridge PPF alternative.
So this draft policy recognises the relationship between the C2C scheme and the West Cambridge site, doesn't it?
It does, but it could equally refer to a other scheme as the sort of policy, planning policy does.
And it's also envisaged in this emerging policy that the C2C scheme will influence further growth at this site, isn't it?
Well, yes, well, the CPPF alternative could do the same.
Then if we go back to your note, paragraph 3, you make 2 points there about the West Cambridge site. You refer firstly to the construction of the Eddington development, and secondly you make the point about the main sites identified for future housing. And I think you also mentioned this in response to a question from Mr. Cambourne. On that second point, have you got your note there?
Yeah.
Yeah. On that second point, you don't refer to the additional 2,000 units at Cambourne that are mentioned in the emerging local plan, do you?
I don't mention those. I think it was making a general point about the sort of scale of development versus the overall scale of development for Cambridge.
And we know that Cambourne is identified as a site for strategic scale development. If there were to be more development proposed at Cambourne, for example, along the lines of these numbers of 5,000 to 10,000 units that you mentioned here, that would affect your view on the second point, wouldn't it?
Well, potentially it would, but maybe there are other sites that come in forward with more housing than that. I don't know, but the scale of that sort of development at Cambourne, my understanding is dependent on East West Rail.
Okay, now if we could look at the emerging policy for Cambourne. That's from page 99 of the emerging plan.
Page 99.
Yep. Policy SCB.
Yeah.
Policy.
SCB, sorry, I'm just looking at the time and I'm going to ask a few questions on this policy. So if now is an appropriate time for another break, we could have another break and then I'll move on to this, asking about this emerging policy.
I've got a note we'd have a break in about 4 minutes.
Yeah.
So, quarter of an hour?
10 minutes, fine.
Sure. Okay, in that case, we'll come back at 11:46. Okay, it's 11:46. Thank you.
Thank you.
Over to you, Ms. Drabkin-Writer.
So, Mr. Littlewood, we were on page 99 of the Emerging Local Plan, Policy SCB Cambourne. Just want to look at a few sections of this emerging policy. So, first of all, what will this policy do? It tells us the policy will identify Cambourne as a broad location for longer-term strategic growth as an expansion to Cambourne and provide continued guidance for the existing allocation. Then in terms of the proposed policy direction, it will respond to the opportunity provided by the proposed East-West Rail station at Cambourne. And it also aims to provide sufficient critical mass to allow it to function as an employment centre and meet the needs of its residents. You see that in the bullets below that first paragraph. But also in terms of future development at Cambourne, that needs to consider, do you see in the bullet points, the relationship between Cambourne and Bourne Airfield, how to make the area more sustainable through the mix of services, employment and transport opportunities, and a little bit further down, making effective connections within the new development and with Cambourne for public transport and active travel, as well as connections to the surrounding villages so they can also benefit. Then if you go down a bit further on page 100 to the heading, why is this policy needed? The first paragraph under that heading, Cambourne has been identified as the location for a new railway station. And then the next sentence, along with the Cambourne to Cambridge public transport scheme being brought forward by the Greater Cambridge Partnership, it provides an opportunity to consider how further development could make the most of these connections, but also make the overall Cambourne area a more sustainable place. And national planning policy says that plan making should look to the opportunities provided by major new infrastructure. And then if we just have a look at the penultimate paragraph on this page, identifying the area for additional development should not simply be about delivering more housing, but needs to explore how the area, including Cambourne and Bourne Airfield and nearby villages, will function as a place and the relationship with Cambridge to enhance its sustainability. So that means looking at services, facilities and employment, planning new development to enhance the role of the place, but also looking at connections between places within the area so opportunities are shared and reliance on private car travel is reduced. So the first point is that, like policy SS7 and SS8 in the adopted plan, this is also based on a vision-led approach, isn't it? It's looking to direct growth to the opportunities provided by major new infrastructure.
Yes.
And secondly, again, it recognises the role of both East-West Rail and the C2C scheme in facilitating growth, doesn't it?
It does, but so would the CPPF alternative.
And in terms of the strategy in the plan, it's not just about the connection from Cambourne to Cambridge, is it? It's also about connections between the places within the area, including Bourne Airfield and the villages, isn't it?
It is, but I think that would be a bit more open to question as to what exactly that is envisaged involved in that. I mean, Cambourne hasn't been successful as an employment location. You'd be aware that sort of one of the sites that was allocated for employment has now been turned to housing because there wasn't sufficient demand for that. And I think if you live in a village and you can go to Cambridge on one direction or Cambourne to the other, I think you're pretty much more likely to go to Cambridge in order to meet your service, leisure and employment needs. So I think whilst I can understand why the policy is drafted in that way, and it would be desirable to achieve that, but that doesn't necessarily bear relevance to reality of the situation.
But isn't that exactly what this policy is trying to do, to change, to make Cambourne a more sustainable place and more of a destination?
Well, you can try and do that, but if businesses don't want to locate there, then you can't achieve that. I mean, that was the aspiration on the previous local plan, and it hasn't been achieved. It's not because the policy wasn't in place, it was because there wasn't the demand for it.
And in terms of the reference to Bourne Airfield and the nearby villages, the idea is that they can also benefit from East-West Rail and the corresponding changes that will come with it through these better connections, isn't it?
Yes, an example of the KMPPF alternative, the cycle route that we're proposing, which was proposed by the applicant, would provide a link between Cambourne and Cambourne. There's a sixth form college in Cambourne where plenty of people who live in Cambourne at the minute go to that college, and so our cycle route would enable them to do that, whereas the GCP proposed active travel route wouldn't.
And in this context, in terms of the relationship between Cambourne, Bourne Airfield, the surrounding villages, and C2C's role in that, it's not just about improving journey times, is it? It's also having a placemaking role in the Cambourne area as well.
Well, I mean, that is something that people have challenged, I'll be honest with you, because the route through Bourne Airfield is at the northern end of Bourne Airfield. So if you live at the southern end of Bourne Airfield, when it's eventually built out, you'll be more than a kilometre from the busway. And I think Mr. Lee in his evidence stated that, and we've been consistent in our response about Bourne Airfield, that really, if you were doing placemaking, the C2C scheme should go through the middle of Bourne Airfield so that it was central and formed a part of that of the village, really. So it doesn't particularly do that. And also, if you're talking about placemaking, then the C2C scheme is not particularly good placemaking around Coton, is it? Where you're talking about significant harm to a unique ecological and cultural heritage asset. So I don't support that. No.
In terms of how this emerging policy is, the terms in which it's drafted and how it's envisaging Cambourne as a place, it sees the C2C scheme as having a placemaking role within that, doesn't it? Yeah, it's talking about the connections.
Yeah, and the CPPF alternative would exactly the same, because there's no difference between the two schemes in the Cambourne area.
And I just want to look at now the development strategy update, just to round off this point, or these questions, because that is the latest document that has been produced by the councils. So that's CD 750. You can put away the emerging plan first proposals now.
So just give me the CD number again.
750.
Thank you.
And what page are we going to?
So if we just start on page 3, first of all, are you familiar with this document?
I'm not so familiar with the update.
Well, we'll just go through it, and if you need me to go more slowly, just let me know. But if we just look at paragraph 1.4, that tells us the purpose of this report. This report was issued in January 2023, following the first proposals consultation in November 2021. We see that in 1.3 and updated evidence, including the need for jobs and homes. So we see at 1.4, this report has been informed by updated evidence, an interim sustainability appraisal, and by consideration of and responses to the relevant representations received to the first proposals consultation in 2021. And it addresses the updated need for jobs and homes, exploring the provision of employment and housing, what is deliverable, and how we will determine what is appropriate, having regard in particular to water supply, and then confirming the development strategy, including key strategic sites and development strategy next steps. So essentially it considered whether the development strategy needed to change in the light of updated housing needs and economic forecasts and concerns around water supplies. That's what that paragraph is saying, isn't it?
That's what it says, yes.
And then if we just go to what the conclusions were, that's on page 15. We see at paragraph 4.4, the section headed Overall Development Strategy. And the second bullet tells us the Council's view on the development strategy. We see thereafter the dash, having reviewed first proposals, representations and our evidence, we confirm that the development strategy principles that inform the first proposal's development strategy remain valid, and we would build on these to inform the identification of additional sites. As such, we would expect to reach a view on sites included in the first proposals as a first step. This would include the other new strategic scale development identified as an expansion of Cambourne, taking into account the recent announcement regarding East-West Rail. So essentially, what this document is doing is confirming that the development strategy principles remain valid, and there's still a plan to have a strategic allocation at Cambourne, but that's to be confirmed in the next stage of the process, which we will obviously see next week. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay, now just a few questions on the approach you take in your proof of evidence to these matters. So if we go back to paragraph 6.3. So 6.31 on page 13, you say at the end of that paragraph, there is another transport scheme proposed which would meet the need, East-West Rail, and you've mentioned that a few times this morning as well. But that would not have the effect of connecting additional housing, employment and services and the rail station at Cambourne with Bourne Airfield and the surrounding villages, would it?
Well, I'm not sure the proposal before us does that particularly. The CPPF alternative would do the same. I mean, that's the point here. I don't think we're not disagreeing with the need, as I've discussed with Mr. Cameron, for improvements to public transport. Our view is just that those needs can be met through a CPPF alternative. And actually, if you were going to invest that much money in a railway, which, as Mr. Lee's evidence shows, would take you to a lot of destinations in Cambridge a lot more reliably and a lot more quicker, then the question is whether the harm caused by the applicant scheme is justified given the impact of East-West Rail. And we don't want to rehash all the arguments that we've had at the inquiry so far about the impact of East-West Rail on the business case and all the rest of it.
Okay, so I may be able to short-circuit these questions quite a lot, because the way I read what you say in your proof of evidence here is that the compelling need you identify, you say would be met by East-West Rail, but you're actually saying that wouldn't be met by East-West Rail. There would still be a need for a scheme, either the applicant scheme or the CPPF
There would be
alternative.
a need for a residual scheme, yes.
Okay. And just to kind of underline this, because you do put the point another way, a paragraph 3.18 of your proof of evidence. That's on page 6. You refer there to the political hiatus as East-West Rail and CAM were put forward, and you state that you considered the alternative a better fit with those schemes than C2C because of your, and you say your understanding that the cumulative impacts of East-West Rail, Cambridge Autonomous Metro and the C2C preferred scheme would be unacceptable and unjustified to serve a relatively small population in the Cambourne area, even with significant future growth. So we know now there is no current proposal to implement the CAM. If you remove that from the equation, do you still hold this same view? Would you say the impacts of EWR and the scheme are unacceptable?
Yes, I mean, I don't think anyone would disagree that cumulative impacts of two major transport schemes in close proximity to each other would have a cumulative impact on landscape, ecology, heritage and community. And I think it's contingent upon those schemes to minimise those impacts. And I think what we're putting forward as the CPPF alternative is a way to achieve that.
In terms of your understanding on the cumulative evidence, you don't put forward any evidence to the inquiry to explain that cumulative impact, do you?
Well, we don't have the detail on East-West Rail yet, no.
And what significant future growth are you referring to here? Are you referring to Bourne Airfield and Cambourne West, or are you referring to the emerging plan?
I'm referring to the emerging plan.
Okay.
And
But not the additional growth proposed by the Cambridge Growth Company?
yes, both of those.
And what's your basis for saying a relatively small population in the Cambourne area? What are you comparing that to there?
Well, if you're looking at what's the total population of Cambourne at the moment? 10,000 people, something like that. So if you're adding on the development, you might get to 20,000 people. I'm not sure how many towns around the country of 20,000 people have got a railway line, a busway, dual carriageway, etc., etc. And so there's just, it's overkill.
And your position that both East West Rail and the scheme would be unjustified or overkill, that's not the position, as we've already seen, taken in the emerging local plan, is it? Which states that the spatial strategy is heavily informed by both of those schemes.
Or the CPPF alternative, yes.
And in terms of it also doesn't align with the identification of Cambourne in the emerging local plan as a location for strategic scale growth. Quite a large amount of additional growth, does it?
What doesn't, sorry?
Your position that both of these schemes would be unjustified together.
Well, I don't think that it's unclear what, we're talking about hypothetical here. We're talking about emerging local plan and plans of Cambridge Growth Company, which no one's seen the light of day yet. So it'd be almost impossible for me to comment on the scale of growth that's proposed. I'm just raising concerns that the previous local plan had identified Cambourne as a growth for employment, and that's not happened because employers didn't want to locate there. So you can say whatever you like in policy terms, but what happens will be dictated by the market. So you might have a desire to have some strategic outputs there, but until we've seen the detail and we can start to analyse the detail and look at what's realistic and unrealistic and achievable and unachievable, I don't think I or anyone else is in a position to comment on that.
And in terms of, and I hear your point that some additional scheme as well as East West Rail is needed, but in terms of what would be offered by East West Rail and the applicant scheme, should that be approved, that would offer a genuine choice of modes as required by the MPPF, wouldn't it?
So would the CPPF alternative.
Thank you. Those are all my questions.
Thank you. Just before myself and Mr. Clegg ask you a few questions, Mr. Cameron, just before we started, I just asked that point about the turn-in on the plans that you check. Is there anything you want to add about that, or just before we go into our questions and then re-examination? Sorry, I wasn't clear. This is the point about the
it's the green
position.
Green area, the position of it.
Yeah.
No, so we can check, but I haven't followed it up because, as I said at the time, I will do if you'd like me to. The questions were put on the basis of the existing green area, and then I did ask about that point on that drawing. But the point on that map is where the pink area is. It doesn't matter to my question, where the turn-in is. What matters is what's covered by the pink area.
That's right, and that's what I understood from both your questions and from Mr. Littlewood's answers on that point. Thank you. I'll start with Mr. Clegg.
Mr. Littlewood, just a few things I'd like to ask you, please. In paragraph 3.1 of your proof, on page 2, you refer to the National Trust covenants.
Yeah.
I don't think we've touched on those in the questions that have been put to you, but could you just explain, firstly, what they involve, and secondly, to which land of the CPPFs they relate? I've got up also, in addition to your proof, the plan of your land holding, which is core document 2954-2.
Let me get that up first, that'll probably help me. So, sorry, that's core document
2954-2.
So the covenants were taken out with the National Trust when a piece of legislation was changed to enable the National Trust to have covenants over land which it doesn't own. And part of the reason...
So it's never been National Trust land?
It's not National Trust land.
They don't, has been?
No, they don't own it. And so my understanding, if this relates back to the 1950s or whenever this was done, is that previously most of this land was owned by Cambridge past, present and future. And the the Trust and Cambridge Past, Present and Future wanted to ensure that in the long term, over the very long term, that this landscape was protected, particularly the sort of Coton Orchard area. I think the charity wanted to sell some of that land for whatever reason, I don't know at the time. And so the National Trust covenants were a means in which the land could still be protected from development over the long term. So Coton Orchard, for example, is no longer owned by my charity, but it still has the National Trust covenants on it because at one time it was
I see. Yeah.
owned by that. So in answer to your question, some of our land holdings are still covered by the National Trust covenants. So in particular, the 2 fields that this scheme would go through.
And am I right in thinking that that's the land immediate to the south of Madingley Road?
That's correct, basically.
That block of,
yeah, so the National Trust covenants cover in actual fact, the National Trust covenants cover all of our land, so all of that shown on red in the plan that you've got here,
yes.
But it also covers land which isn't owned by Cambridge PPF, such as Coton Orchard, so the land south of Madingley Road.
So they cover all your current land holding?
Yes.
Plus some land that you've disposed of?
Exactly.
And it's to ensure, basically to ensure that the land remains
undeveloped, yeah.
Undeveloped. Okay. If we could just stay with that plan for a moment.
Yeah.
You told us earlier on when you were giving evidence that it was the intention that you'd like to extend the area of land that's part of the Countryside Reserve. And I just want to understand exactly what land is part of that Countryside Reserve at present. And I think some of the land's farmed as well.
Yes, it's a bit of a nebulous concept, Mr. Klebb. So essentially, most of the land that's shown here on the map is farmed and farm tenanted, but it's also that farmed land is also part of the Coton Countryside Reserve.
Oh, right, I thought it's not one or the other.
No, it's not one of the other. But for the purpose of advertising the reserve to the public and improving public access, the charity identified some of its land parcels to sort of, under that banner. So that was mostly the sort of solid block of land that is west of the M11, rather than the sort of smaller parcels of land in the area north of
Going from the
Cambourne.
M11, there's a large block which goes up to a yellow road.
Yes.
And that's Countryside Reserve.
Yes.
And farmed.
Yes. I mean, I think you're going to go visit Red Meadow Hill, and you'll get an idea.
That's further over, isn't it?
Yeah,
Southwest.
and that would be a good example of that. So you'll see that Red Meadow Hill is mostly farmed, but the top of the hill isn't farmed, and so it's a mixture of mostly farmland, but some land which has been taken out of agricultural production and turned over to nature, and where we've provided permissive walking routes around the field. So you can take a permissive walking route to the top of Red Meadow Hill, where you can enjoy a nice meadow and a nice view, but you'll see the majority of that block of land, as it were, is still farmed. And so the Countryside Reserve is a concept which includes farmed land which is not farmed, and public access.
What about the land on the east side of the M11, that block there?
Well, because of the M11, we haven't sort of advertised that, but it's exactly the same. It's all farmland, a bit of land that's been taken out of production, and there's a permissive path across it.
Yes. And the land where the busway would go, the land towards the north of that plan, the A road, I think you've already intimated that is farm, because you referred to comments from the tenant farmer.
Yeah.
Is that land to which there is also public access?
At the moment, no, other than as you view it walking along Cambridge Road.
Right, yes, yeah. thank you for that. Just staying with the plan again, I think I've read in some of your documentation in connection with the public open space and the exchange land that CPPF have suggested that they have more appropriate land
Yes.
that would be suitable for the exchange than the land that's been proposed by the applicant. Can you identify it in relation to this plan?
Yes, so if you look at the land which is to the east of the M11,
Yes.
and it sort of goes forward into almost a sort of point or a nipple or something like that at the top,
Where the footpath goes?
where the footpath goes, there's a green area there, so you can see there's a sort of green triangle on the very tip of that area there.
There is a small green area.
That's correct, that's the area that we're referring to.
And sorry, in terms of that, is that where your permissive path goes or not?
Yes, there is a permissive path run through there.
And is that alongside the M11, where it says track, or is that somewhere else?
No, the permissive path sort of almost follows the red line boundary, so it sort of goes along, follows it down, and then comes across. It doesn't extend into the sort of very eastern field, but it crosses the others.
You're talking about on the east side, aren't you?
On the east side, yeah.
Yeah. So the path that currently leads up to that.
So the Coton footpath, which is what you is commonly referred to, there's a gate from Coton footpath into that area of woodland currently, and you can go into that.
So you can go into it already.
You can go into it already, and then.
So from that point of view, is there already de facto public access?
You could say that it's permissive, so it's not a public open space. It's not. Public doesn't have the right, but we allow.
The public's able to go onto it.
The public is able to use the path through it. Yes.
And is it used for anything else other than permissive public access?
No, there's a section of woodland at the top, which is the green bit shown on the map there.
Yes.
And then the field next to that is in agriculture, and there's a sort of agri-environment strip there as well. Which
is it just the woodland that you're suggesting would be preferable?
The woodland would be preferable, but if more land was needed, we could look at taking some of that farmland out of production there.
Next question is, why do you say this is preferable to that being proposed by the applicants?
Because it's immediately available, whereas the applicant's public open space is not available until the scheme's been constructed and opened. So there'll be a period where there's a loss of public open space, and some years before it's available to the public. I think also it meets the similar benefits that the applicant set out for its public open space are met by the CPPF open space.
It's adjacent to the M11,
It is.
whereas the applicant's suggested land is further away.
I think in terms of the impact of the M11 at that point in location, so I don't think it makes that much difference whether you're a few metres further away or not in terms of the noise impact.
Yes. I think you suggested to Mr. Cameron that if it was further away, the amenity might be greater.
I think we were just, I think in response to the first consultation on this, we were suggesting that actually, a better location for public open space would be what we call the Westfield, so south of the West Cambridge.
Sorry,
What's known as the Westfield. So further, there's a scheme as it comes out of the West Cambridge campus and heads towards Grange Road. It bends round and will create a triangle of land. And I think we felt that would have been a better location to have some new public open space. And that was the response that we made initially.
But that's separate land, is it, from your...
That's not our land, no.
I think you could do to further that.
No, and so I think the applicant said for whatever reason they don't want to pursue that particular piece of land and have chosen this one, and so we've then compared that with our alternative.
Right, thank you. Different question now. Could you move on to page 16 of your proof and paragraph 7.5? And you're talking here, we're up at Madingley Road now. You're talking about the relationship of the alternative scheme that you're advocating with, amongst other things, the American cemetery. And just below, halfway down in that paragraph, you say there would be no direct harm to the heritage asset and very low harm to the setting of the cemetery. Now, you're recognising in that statement that there would be some harm to the setting of the cemetery. And I just want to understand what harm it is that you acknowledge.
Well, we're saying that the CPS scheme would need to use more of the verge outside of the cemetery. And
So more of the
verge.
yeah.
So the highway verge outside the cemetery. So we acknowledge that our scheme will use the highway verge outside the cemetery, and therefore there would be more road outside the cemetery than there is currently, and that's a sort of very low level of harm that we're talking about.
And is that the extent of the harm that you think would
Yes,
occur?
yes.
Thanks, Mr. Littlewood.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've just got a couple of things I'd like to clarify, Mr. Littlewood. Just staying on the issue of the cemetery. Earlier in your evidence, you were talking about the effect of the wall at the cemetery. By that, did you mean the large wall with the names inscribed on the north side?
Yes, exactly. I mean, it seems to have been designed in a way that it's experienced from inside the cemetery with the names on the wall, etc. But it you know, as well as being a memorial, I mean, it's a very clever piece of architecture. As well as being a memorial wall, it also serves to screen the inside of the cemetery from what's going on outside and prevent people from looking in. So it serves both a practical function as a memorial, but it also performs an architectural function as well.
I understood, and maybe perhaps I'm wrong, that when you were describing it, that you understood that wasn't listed. Is that correct?
No, but I understand it is listed. Yes.
And in that case, I mean, does that have a setting to the south, in your view?
I don't think it's intended to be experienced. I suppose what I'm trying to say there is that the architects have designed it in a way that the value of the wall is on the north side. That's where you experience it, that's where you see the names, you see it in the setting of the pond and the other buildings. But it's a clever architectural ruse, because from the other side it acts as a boundary wall screening the cemetery from the world outside, and so it depends on its heritage values on the north side, and its function on the south side is really as a sort of screening function.
Would that screening function not form part of its heritage significance, or are you saying that it doesn't?
Well, I mean, as I said, the outside of that area has got access roads, it's got footpaths, it's got a car park. No,
I was actually asking about the heritage significance of the listed wall, as to whether or not you felt that screening of those features that you were just describing contributed to its significance or not.
Well, yes, in the sense that it screens the cemetery from what the features that are outside of it.
And just moving on to another aspect. Again, during I think cross-examination, you explained what you felt the effect on openness of the green belt would be in terms of the movement of buses, and I think in situations where the roadway itself might not be apparent.
Yeah.
Can you say a bit more about that, and what do you consider the effects would be, and how it would affect openness, or indeed how it would affect other features of the green belt?
I think in terms of, you know, that built, you know, if you imagine the bus was stationary, let's say, then, you know, if you were looking at that as a feature, it's, you know, particularly if it was a double-decker bus, it's quite a large developed feature. In the countryside, it would have an effect on openness. Now, obviously, it's
my understanding was
moving.
that I think double-decker buses aren't necessarily proposed, is it?
Well, they're not necessarily proposed, but there's no requirement not to use them, and the double-decker buses are used to serve all the other park and rides around Cambridge, with the exception of the one to the south where there's a low bridge.
Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, so I think it's in that sense of, you know, a development being visible in the landscape.
But again, you say development. I mean, for most of the time, buses aren't going to be stationary, are they? And it's a vehicle moving on the development, not the development itself. Is that?
Yes, I think you know, in terms of that impact, it was just the addition of the buses on top of the carriageway, the bus stops, the lighting, the signage, the embankments, the bridges. All of those things contribute to an effect on the openness, to which, you know, our argument is you could add the, you know, the buses themselves.
But sorry, I think that the point was there was locations where I think, if I understood your evidence correctly, you accepted that actually the infrastructure might not be visible.
That's correct. Yeah.
So putting aside other features which you say may have an effect on the green belt where they are sort of acceptable, or where they're present, it was more about the position of sort of openness with those moving vehicles.
Yes, I think that was the view that we'd taken, that they would have the buses would have an impact on the openness. You may disagree.
On just going back to heritage matters, you talk about you can say about the harm to Coton Conservation Area, and I think particularly the listed church. Can you say more about what that harm would be, and how it would affect the significance of those two assets?
Yeah, I think that really sort of comes back to the reason that our charity holds the land and the National Trust has covenants on it, in that it was really been identified a very long time ago that this sort of area on the west of Cambridge has some historic villages which, you know, are worthy of conservation. That's Madingley, Coton and Grantchester, and they sit within the sort of countryside setting of Cambridge, and I think that's flagged in the sort of response that Historic England gave initially, is that, you know, this is a relatively sensitive landscape, and I think our concern is that this piece of infrastructure, or whilst it has no direct impact on the church and the conservation area, it affects your appreciation, as it were, of that conservation area. When you've got a large piece of transport infrastructure on the edge of the village, it affects how you view that village.
So you mentioned there that it talked about the setting of Cambridge, but I was asking about the setting of the church and Coton Conservation Area.
I think that's just how it might be perceived. For example, if you're, you know, walking from Cambridge Road down towards Coton Village, you've got at the minute you've got a rural landscape, a village, the church spire. You'll have a piece of, you know, three lane road in your foreground with a bus stop, lighting, and everything else. So it's how the individual is going to experience that heritage.
And just, can you say a bit more about what, in terms of the significance of the listed church, what significance does it derive from its setting, in terms of it being a listed building?
I can't answer that question. I'm sorry. I don't know the specific listing of the church.
Sorry, but you said this will harm the significance of the church.
Well, there's a setting of the conservation area.
But I'm saying what, in terms of the significance of that church, it obviously has its significance, which comes from its architecture, history, etc. But you're also saying that it derives some significance from its setting.
Yes, in the sense that it's a village church, in a historic village. If you go and visit Coton and you go to the church, you'll see that there's a sort of historic core to the centre of the village.
But what specific sort of characteristics would the development alter, and why would that be harmful?
I think at the minute it's a village church, and as I've tried to explain, it's in a rural, still in a relatively rural setting, given its proximity to the M11 and other things. So it's a village church in a village, and I think that is disrupted if you're viewing the village from the north and you've got the busway in the foreground and the village and the church in the background. Your experience of that being kind of rural, traditional village is transformed by some modern infrastructure.
And are there particular sort of viewpoints where you consider that that experience would be altered?
I think as you're approaching it, I think we're thinking of it.
So when you approach it,
from Cambridge Road, as you get towards the village, you can start to see through the hedge at that point. I think our obviously issue around this is thinking long term, in that we want our land there to be able to be used ideally and enjoyed by the public, and it would then be in the foreground of that. So we're thinking about not just now, but what would happen in future.
and are there any other places where you'd experience it?
I think if you're walking down the public right-of-way, there's a public right-of-way which I hope you will visit between sort of Madingley Road and American Cemetery down towards the village.
We've walked north along it. So
yeah, and so again, if you're coming back towards the village, you're going to see the busway in the foreground and the village in the background.
And again, in terms of Coton Conservation Area, what it obviously has its significances in terms of the buildings and the area, but what does it derive? You know, how is that significance derived from its setting? You've talked about the setting of the church.
Yes, it's a historic village centre, so there's a series of older buildings around the church, and that sort of which is covered by the conservation area. But it's a village, and so it's sitting in that village context. It's surrounded by farmland or agricultural land or undeveloped land, and obviously Cambridge is expanding out to it at pace.
Well, I'm not talking about Cambridge. I'm talking about the effect of the proposal that's before us.
Yeah. Well, yes. I mean, on the impact on the conservation area will be less limited. It's more on the sort of aspect of the church, which is a visible element in the landscape.
Thank you. I think that's covered all the additional questions we had. Yeah, as Mr. Clegg has reminded me, we've been sitting for 3/4 of an hour, so next it'll be re-examination, but do we need a break?
Well, let me check. I've got very few questions. I think it should take a matter of 10 minutes, and I also as a maximum, so it's a matter for Mr. Littlewood whether...
Yeah, I think, given that I'll be finished after that, I think that's fine to continue.
Okay. In that case, that's the end of our questions, so over to you, Mr. Barker.
Thank you, Mr. Littlewood. My questions all relate to the heritage assets at the American Cemetery. And I just want to clarify some points in relation to the plans that were put to you by Mr. Cameron. Before I do that, I want to ask you one question which comes out of the questions that were asked by Mr. Underwood relating to the memorial wall. and you were asked whether the memorial wall makes a contribution to the significance of the memorial insofar as it screens the features which are to the south of the wall when you are within the memorial itself.
Yeah.
And you said yes, it screens those features. Just for completeness, what effect on the significance of the asset, including the contribution made in terms of its screening, would extending the carriageway towards the yew hedge, such as is proposed in the CPPF alternative, what effect would that have on the significance?
None.
Then I'm going to ask you, I'm afraid, to turn to some plans just to clarify a point that was put to you by Mr. Cambourne about the area of the pink land on the letter from Anthony Eden. But I want to do that first by looking at the highway boundary plans, which are CD 2957. And I think, thankfully, here there is not the issue which has been unduly troubling Mr. Cambourne and myself about differences between the plans. But if you can take up, say, you've got CD 2957, and if you turn to the second page, we have the plans as they relate to the part of the road alongside the American Cemetery.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of your understanding of the highway boundary by reference to the physical features that are currently on the ground, where do you understand the boundary of the highway to be?
Well, the boundary includes some of the island which is outside the front of the cemetery.
But okay, and in terms of are there any features on the ground which, in your understanding, mark that boundary of not in the area of the island, but in front of the cemetery?
Presumably the hedge.
The hedge. Okay, thank you. So we've got the hedge, and you pointed out that some of the island is within the highway boundary. In terms of then the heritage asset itself, there is a plan within the appendix to Mr. Wilson's proof. We can go there if we need to. What is your understanding, though, of the boundary of the heritage asset itself? So the registered park and garden, sorry. So it's page 9 of the PDF, the registered park and garden.
It runs up to the highway boundary.
So again, in terms of the physical features on the ground, you said the highway boundary goes to the hedge. By reference to the hedge, where does the heritage asset?
To the hedge.
To the hedge. Now, if we can then take up the plan attached to the letter, which shows the yellow, the pink and the blue areas. Do you have that?
I don't know.
Okay, so it's CD 1616.
CD 106.
Yeah.
16.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's PDF page 11.
Yeah.
Now, in your evidence, you said, well, it's not entirely clear what the line is on this plan, and what one of the quirks that's been thrown up by Mr. Underwood, which I don't think anyone's previously looked at, is the precise location of the semicircular area. So again, query how accurate this plan is. But what is your understanding, or what would your assumption be? Reasonable assumption, but is, I think, an assumption based on what you've said, as to where the edge of the pink land would be.
Well, it would be the highway boundary.
And again, if we're looking at, if the yew hedge, sorry, just to be clear, the yew hedge marks the boundary between the highway and the heritage asset, where would you understand the boundary of this pink line to be by reference to that particular feature?
To the hedge.
Thank you. And then final plan, you'll be pleased to hear. Mr. Woodfield's proof of evidence, which is, I don't have a core document reference immediately for that, but I will just find you one. Mr. Woodfield. It is CD 2610W4.
Yeah, so proof of evidence.
Yeah.
What page?
So we are on PDF page 67.
Yeah.
And if you can see 4 sections of route there.
Yeah.
Are you on that page now?
Yeah.
Yeah. You see 4 sections of route. The second one down is the area in which includes the American cemetery. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can see to the north of the carriageway 4 yellow dots with black circles around them. They're large rural trees. That's the green area. Yeah. And you were asked by Mr. Cameron about the red dot immediately below them.
Yeah.
Which is indicated to be a lost rural tree.
Yeah.
And a series of questions were asked you by Mr. Cameron about the relationship between that tree and its location and the pink area on the plan. Yeah.
Yeah.
But having regard to
The question wasn't only about the tree, it was also about the habitat loss shown on page 69.
okay, well, starting within the that's fine. We can look at either plan, either by reference to the lost tree on page 67, or if you scroll down to the habitat shown to be lost on 69, which includes the orange dot for the tree. Yeah.
Yeah.
What is your understanding as to the relationship between those areas of land and the pink land shown on the plan? Are they within the pink land or without the pink land?
They're outside of the pink land.
Thank you. Mr. Littlewood, those are all the questions I had for you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Parker, I think I just need to come back on one point, which is where you started. And I think in reply to your question about the wall, Mr. Littlewood said there would be no effect on the significance of the asset. And I don't think that's consistent with what the point I asked him about at 7.5.
I think the difference is between the memorial, which extends to the wall,
Yes.
with the registered park and garden, which extends to the hedge. So,
Well, I think you were asking about the. You were asking about the wall, which is part of the listed building.
part of the memorial, which
Yes.
is the boundary of the
Yes.
memorial. So I think you might. I don't want to speak for Mr. Littlewood, but I think it may be a confusion in the questions that I'd put. But the question about the wall, as I'd understood it from Mr. Underwood, related to the memorial, whose boundary is the wall, and the answers that Mr. Littlewood gave were directed towards the significance of the memorial, which ends at the wall, and all
Yes.
the screening functions played by the wall and so on, which wouldn't, in his evidence, be harmed by the extension of the carriageway. And the questions that you asked, which I understood to relate to the registered park and garden, which extends further to the hedge.
You're quite right, yes. The heritage asset there is the registered park and garden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Thank you, Mr. Littlewood.
Thank you.
I think we should probably stick with the two now. Yeah.
I had sort of asked to see if anyone was going to be available to fill any time between between now and lunch, given that we'd indicated 2 o'clock to start with interested parties. But I think since there's only there's less than 20 minutes before lunch, what we'll do is we'll break for lunch now, and we'll resume at 2 o'clock as the programme. So apologies for those who are perhaps waiting to sort of appear before lunch, but we'll go back to the programme. So, the inquiry is now adjourned. We'll resume at 2 o'clock. Thank you.